Have you ever wondered why people say, oh, I don't see color as a way to fix racism? Yeah, that doesn't work.
MTV. What happened to you? You used to be all about the music and giving potentially talented artists the ability to tap into an audience that otherwise wouldn't have found them by any other means. Now you've devolved from said artist controversy, reality TV, and worst of all, identity politics. I guess this progression in absolute contempt would only make sense considering that now artists don't need a cable TV news network in order for their music to be heard, but did it really have to come to this?
On this show, we talk about race all the time.
Exactly my point about identity politics. Also, Franchesca, have you ever once considered that talking about race all the time is exactly what racists do casually? Or is it okay because you're black?
But I've got a bomb to drop. Biologically speaking, race doesn't exist.
So if race doesn't exist, how can the concept of racism exist? How would people be able to infer someone based on their skin color from another person with a different skin color? Why is it that, despite your claim that race doesn't exist, you talk an awful lot about race like as if it exists? To me, you've conflated race not existing and race being an irrelevant talking point.
Oh my goodness, we've all been lied to! Wait, why am I hosting this show?
Nice attempt at humor, but seriously, why are you if that is the case?
So race isn't biological, but
Hold on a second. It is biological. Melatonin develops in our skin naturally depending on the melatonin of our birth parents. If they both happen to be black, then yes, one will develop more melatonin in the skin than, say, me being born from two white parents. If it wasn't biological, then the color of our skin just comes out of the fucking blue, which it most certainly doesn't.
But the social construct of race and racism still have a very real impact on everyone's lives. And this isn't just about feelings.
Oh, come on, Franchesca. This is all about feelings. Insecurity, egotism, self-superiority over others. You aren't solving racism by demanding that others notice your race so often, yet go on to say it doesn't exist. You are, in fact, bolstering it by making others acutely aware of it.
Race is all about the structural foundation of social power.
So this is your way of saying power plus privilege, right? Because there can't be any black people in power like Obama per se. No black businessmen, no black lawyers, cops, CEOs. You're just going to spout this like as if no black person ever in their entire life has the tools necessary to reach that threshold of power. And it only comes down to their skin. See, who's the racist here again? Me or you?
So why do so many people incorrectly think race is biological? Well, beyond the fact that we like to group people based on external characteristics, it goes like this. In biology, there is a concept of genetically different subspecies, which a lot of people confuse with human races. Biologists actually have a scale for this, and humans don't even come close to qualifying. Throughout history, people have used this incorrect understanding of subspecies to justify all kinds of terribleness, and even proclaim other races as less than human.
Which would include you from the previous statement about race being about power, apparently, and not that a race has a kind of culture behind it, like how mine would. But it's not racist when you do it because you've convinced yourself that you don't have the power, despite being on a major TV internet channel, and that you've set the bar low for your peers. This is what we like to call the soft bigotry of low expectations.
But modern genetics has shown that the lines around race are so arbitrary that they're actually meaningless.
But that does not mean that it is there. See, you first claim that race doesn't exist, yet show that there is a biological imperative when it comes to the development of skin color by melatonin, and now go on to say that because it is meaningless that it practically doesn't exist, so you can say that when others you deem racist just simply don't understand that race is meaningless, despite how much emphasis you put on it. It's this black and white want to play on both sides of the fence argument that most people tune you out as nothing else but manipulative in their racism. Your skin color doesn't avoid you from making these pitfalls.
And since I'm not a scientist, I'll take a quote. Francis Collins, the director of the National Human Genome Research Institute, said it himself: "Those who wish to draw precise racial boundaries around certain groups will not be able to use science as a legitimate justification."
But who is the one drawing the lines of race? Is it society or is it the races themselves? Do you think society as a blanket statement made Irish people out to be a bunch of alcoholic-induced, bar-brawling gingers? Or is it because their race and culture holistically predicated on it? Not to say that all Irish people are like that, but the stereotype exists for a reason, and that reason doesn't come down to racism or just a mere observation of the broken patterns of a particular culture. Also, aren't you the one attempting to draw boundaries of races? And if race doesn't exist, how can anyone draw those lines to begin with? Fuck me!
Oops, I dropped the mic.
Stone Boy! Hold the mic! But nevertheless, kind of a weak appeal when we're still 4 or so minutes into your quip about race after the mic drop.
So if race doesn't exist biologically, why do we keep talking about it? Sound the alarm! We keep talking about race because we created it! Yay, us!
Yay us! Race is just one part of a culture, so yes, in a way it is a social construct. But that doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing, just like the conflation that gender is a social construct, therefore bad. You haven't explained how it is bad, yet the reasoning for us to come to that conclusion makes sense because we can notice genders from birth as well as skin color. It's just for the good whole few of us, we don't see it as pertinent to the argument of one's well-being to the world. Only you, Franchesca.
That's right, race is a social construct. A social construct is a category, perception, or idea created and developed by society and then applied to individuals or groups.
Where is the law in the Constitution that states, "He who is black and is born from Detroit must steal car stereos and smoke weed every day"? That's right, it's not there. So if anyone is applying this idea or perception, it must be from other individuals, not the whole of society, right? And that the person is willfully allowing themselves to propagate the stereotype too? Sounds like you just don't like people's perception of others.
But social constructs are still very real and have huge impacts on our lives. Because you know what else is a social construct? Money.
If I am to infer that black people are generally more poor than white people statistically, and that money is a social construct like races, as Franchesca exclaims, then that must mean that we made money to put down black people. Because there isn't any situation where a black person could make more money than another white person. Hell, I'm sure Franchesca makes more money doing this shit than I am working at a convenience store at a standard 40 hours a week. But nope, I'm still oppressing her because of those doggone social constructs.
And if you don't think money has an enormous impact on your life, well then congratulations. You either have a trust fund or you're an adorable baby. Or maybe you're a dog. Here's what I know. Talking about racism just creates more racism.
Actually, talking about race makes more racism, but good on you to sarcastically mock people who don't see race as pertinent to the person's worth. I'm fine with calling someone racist if they actually inhibit said racism by the book and not by your stupid broad definition of racism.
No. First off, race isn't the problem. Racism is.
Very good refuting yourself, Franchesca, but now you have to ask, if you started this video by stating that race is a social construct, then how can racism exist if it's just a result of that construct? Also, do you not think that you yourself are being racist by asserting that black people are only so bad off, not by their life choices, but by some invisible demon that oppresses them for their melatonin? It most certainly takes away any agency they once had and makes them out to be just unable to control their desire to rob shit out of desperation for money, doesn't it?
And even if it was the problem, problems don't get worse when you talk about them, and they don't magically go away when you ignore them.
But I'm not ignoring race, Franchesca. No egalitarian is ignoring race. It's just that, in most circumstances, it is irrelevant. You have it in your head that either we have to talk about race all the time or not at all. When people say they don't see race, what they mean is that race isn't a deference to their perception of others, not that they literally do not see the physical descriptors of that race.
Not true. I had 5 cavities, I ignored them, and all 5 of those teeth fell out. Poof. Problem solved.
Trying to do humor again, huh? Hey, Franchesca, how many cops does it take to put in a light bulb? None. They just beat the room for being black. Triggered!
Colorblindness, while nice in theory, has no effect on structural and institutional racism.
Can I say again, please? Okay. What structures and institutions of racism? I thought we already established that race is a social construct, so that, in part, there would be no proper way to apply racism intrinsically in society. As far as I'm concerned, structural and institutional are just another way of saying I shouldn't be accountable for my actions, so I'm going to blame it on an invisible force.
Racism is a system, and that system benefits certain people at the expense of others. Ignoring it just lets those problems persist.
Well, the thing is I am not under the impression that institutional racism does exist. I am, however, under the impression that racism does exist and does happen in our country, but that it is not accepted by society, that to which you deem has burned all these black people with this institution. The only time when racism is accepted in our society is, ironically enough, when anyone other than white people do it, because power plus privilege, right? Who has the power and privilege to be racist under the guise of oppression?
Number 1, preschool punishment. Let's face a fact, preschool-aged children of every race are monsters. But according to the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights report released in 2014, black children make up 18% of preschoolers, but almost half of all suspensions. Half.
Okay, so why are they being suspended? Do you think it's because they are black or are being rowdy? I'm going to say, let's not assume it's because of the race, and you'll say, it's entirely because of the race. Once again, who's the racist here? Also, once again, race is a social construct, so all of the statistical data should be rejected by you because it solicits the concept of race, but of course, you're going to use it to make these convenient race-bait traps for me to pry on.
And I don't think anybody believes all these preschool teachers are racist out to get little black children.
I don't, but you are. How can you fucking go out and say that when you make it seem like as if the only reason these kids are being suspended is because they are black? It'd be like if I said that black people make up a minority of the entire demographic, but cause half of all the crimes in the United States, then proceed to turn around and say, well, I don't believe all these cops and the court and the justice system are a bunch of racists out to get black folks. It's not about pointing out statistics that make you racist. It's what you do with those statistics that ultimately determine your perceptions. And frankly, Franchesca, you must really think low of your peers.
But the data shows that black and Latino children often face steeper punishments than their white classmates for the same behavior.
Hold on, where are you getting this? If the black kids are being suspended more often than white kids, that would mean that they are facing steeper punishments. But it's not like if a white kid and a black kid both push someone down on the ground, that the black kid gets 40 lashings and the white kid gets 4. It's more of the circumstance that the black kid is pushing more kids more often than the white kid is, and as a result has to be suspended or whatever. So once again, Franchesca, it's not on the teachers, it's on the kids who are acting so rowdy and the teachers just acting accordingly. Are you insisting that black kids shouldn't be punished for acting rowdy or whatever just because they're black? That's affirmative action. Plain and simple.
That's a problem. And simply believing we shouldn't see race or we shouldn't talk about race does nothing to solve this problem.
In this hypothetical alone, it would, because far be it for me to assume that a black kid is being suspended for being rowdy rather than for being black. You can't just assume that any slight against a black or minority group is because they are a minority group. Nor can I assume there has been no slight against a black or minority group because they are a minority group. There is nuance to be had here, and colorblindness is that very nuance you push in the ground and say, they don't notice my race enough. How dare you? So that whenever something bad happens to you, you can wave it off as institutional racism, structural racism, all the while removing any agency and choice you had in doing so.
Number 2, the name study. A study by the National Bureau of Economic Research confirmed that people with ethnic-sounding names, that's a whole nother episode, are less likely to get interviewed when they apply for jobs. Meanwhile, applicants with white-sounding names actually get 33% more callbacks for interviews.
So this is name discrimination, right? This isn't racism. You're insisting that LaQuisha is specifically entitled to black people is, what is that nomenclature again? Oh yeah, a social construct. But hey, have your cake and eat it too, I guess, because I'm sure you'll never find a black woman named Diane or Elizabeth, or no black man named John or Bob, right? Even your name isn't entitled to black people, although it is more generally exclusive to black people.
Shout out to all the white Taquans struggling to get job interviews.
You have successfully demonstrated that this is not a matter of race-based discrimination, as is name discrimination. The convenience that these names are more attributed to minority or ethnic groups is you navel-gazing for any moment to call out racism at a moment's notice.
So instead of just assuming people shouldn't care about color or names, companies, governments, and schools should take the bias out of hiring and
You are right, Franchesca, but not for the reasons you think. See, there's been lately a lot of preferential treatment when it comes to people of race, because this social justice mob has it hammered into their brain that they should be entitled to positions not by merit or skill, but by race. What about that woman who failed the training for the firefighting position but got it anyway because not enough women? What about Apple's diversity report? What about the fact that I'm sure you, Francesca, didn't get your gig at MTV by your devilishly good looks and charm, if having the right skin color is devilishly good looking?
experiment with nameless resumes to, solve the problem?
Yeah, sure, solve that innocuous name discrimination problem despite it not being a race-based problem. This is not sarcastic in any way. Please, fix that name discrimination so people like Franchesca and MTV can't claim racism when it is nameism or whatever new bullshit buzzword is manifested in Tumblr.
Number 3, renting an apartment. When the Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Urban Institute did a study about real estate, they found that Black, Latino, and Asian renters were shown up to 12% fewer units than white renters. And when the Fair Housing Justice Center used actors to apply for apartments, they found that Black and Latino renters were often told there were no apartments available, while white applicants were shown apartments in the same building.
Once again, Francesca, this comes all down to nuance. You have not demonstrated a motive for why these ethnic groups are being shown less apartments other than because of their color by consent. Here's an idea, Francesca. What kinds of apartments are these people being shown? What kinds of apartments do these ethnic groups want? How much money do these ethnic groups have compared to white people? What is their budget, preferences, all of these things, and yet, nope, it's their skin color. Because I can tell you that perhaps the renters see these folks come in and attribute them to other people of color who are worse off than white people, which generally is a negative stereotype for them to apply to the renter, but nevertheless could be a reason rather than it being absolutely 0 to 100% disparity between the groups. And a disparity is not evidence for racism. There are plenty more women doing yoga and knitting than men are, and you don't see me screaming from the rooftops about sexism, now do ya?
So this building has a pool, a laundry room, and a racist landlady.
And here you can see Franchesca writing on her Tumblr about how all the white folks should die because of institutional racism. Oh wait, that's not racist? Oh well.
Colorblindness won't fix housing discrimination.
Actually, Francesca, in this case it would, because renters wouldn't make a prejudgment about a rentee's budget based on race. But no, the real solution to racism is cultural Marxism, right? Everyone, 50-50 across the board.
So tell me again how colorblindness is going to fix the fact that I can't get an education, a job, or a house.
You have not demonstrated that black people are incapable of gaining an education, a job, or a house. You have only displayed black people having certain difficulties too when it comes to these things, of which has nothing to do with race. Being suspended for being rowdy, shown less houses, turned down resumes based on name have nothing to do with race-based discrimination. For if it were, wouldn't there be turned down resumes based on race? Wouldn't the kids be segregated from the white folk in different schools? Wouldn't you be shown no houses if the renters were racist towards black people? Of course you would, but this is the sad, desperate display at the MTV SJW factory, attempting to grab as many racist straws as they fucking can.
In many cases, colorblindness is actively harmful because it creates a false sense of security for the groups it directly benefits.
I think this is a cherry on this identity politics, race-baiting Sunday, so I figured I'd end it here. You see, Francesca, you don't like colorblindness because it doesn't instill fear into the minds of minority groups so that you can convert them to your social justice cult. You would think that being more reassuring of the benefits and capabilities that black people have without resorting to making them drink the Kool-Aid would put them into the right step into being as well off as white people, giving them the proper education and the right abilities. But no, what you would rather do is have the scales tilt backwards so that the black people are superior to white people by virtue of them being black and white people being white. Because then you can keep going on about how oppressed you are while you more than definitely make more money on this program with MTV than I do working full-time at a convenience store. live in an affordable, well-off home, and probably got the best gender studies education that MTV could buy. And that all of that doesn't matter because my skin color will always overcome you somehow. Colorblindness isn't ignoring race outright. It is a means to ensure others that I won't judge them by their race, and rather judge them by their actions, because the content of the character makes the man. Or does that sound too sexist to you? As much as you go on to say race doesn't exist, you contradict and keep spoon-feeding institutional racism despite how it contradicts with the original precept. It's just your opportunity to say, race is a social construct, but you are a racist. I'm Stuffing Guy 912, and hats off to MTV, degrading ever more slowly into dust.